Please No Gifts, Please, the parenting podcast by the pair with no real gifts, but a whole lot of gumption. Hey everyone, I'm Steve Noviello.
And I'm Jenny Ann Chondo.
Always lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
It has been such a crazy few weeks. We talked about, work. The nighttime show is expanding. There's a new daytime show. I am like, it's back to school. I mean, we're doing this. It's intense.
It's chaotic.
It's intense.
I'm
chairing Hope Party for Grant Halliburton Foundation. I mean, I'm
just sitting over here monologuing it.
Well, you actually have to MC that event because
I am emceeing that event.
I will not be emceeing that event.
As you list these things, I'm going through my work to-do list. We're doing Hispanic Heritage Month. We've got, just initiative.
And then raising children.
After initiative. Yeah. I know. And this is another complaint for another time, but I miss them during the workday, and
for sure,
just hate it.
But how nice though that that they're someplace where they enjoy being. I mean, I feel like your daughter's at.
We do not share these details publicly. Good Lord!
Bleep it out.
They're in great hands. I just miss them. I miss them so much. Anyway, we are here to educate ourselves. Here to educate you guys. And occasionally, I think what happens is because we both work in media, we come across these really incredible contacts where in a traditional media sense, we might get 2 or 3 minutes and we really want to dive deep and get some more details and share them with everybody else.
So let me tell you real quick about the organization that we're going to talk about today, which is Care Dallas. So whoever does their Instagram marketing is doing a good job because I came across them last year and saw that they were having this breakfast at the Dallas Country Club. Yeah. Addiction is a cause near and dear to my heart. So I said, I'm going to go and check it out. And it was so interesting to me to go to this thing. First of all, the Dallas, who would have thought in a million years that I would be sitting at the Dallas Country Club listening to somebody share their story about their issues with addiction. Sure. I think that sometimes this is a difficult conversation to have because people think, it doesn't belong in certain communities and so on and so forth. It was a really great event, and it made me want to find out more about them. So here they are.
So here we are. So what they do is Care Dallas basically helps to educate people on addiction and provide referral resources for families in need. We'll get deeper into it, but that's sort of the crux of it. And we actually have a couple of their board members here today. Dr. Lee Spencer, who, as I understand, is an addiction psychiatrist, and then Fritz Dykert, who is a sober coach. And we've been learning more behind the scenes about what a sober coach does. So great to have both of you.
Yeah, good to see you both. Yeah, for sure. So first of all, tell us about Care Dallas.
Care is a nonprofit organization here in Dallas that exists basically for 2 reasons. One, to sort of educate the youth and adults on substance use, trying to promote more of a healthy community in North Dallas, Park Cities area in particular. And so we have one arm that focuses on education and outreach in the community. And we have one arm that focuses on providing referral resources for people that need help, have a loved one that needs treatment, or they themselves need treatment. A lot of times people don't know where to turn when they need help acutely. And so at Care, we help them figure out, okay, what resources do you need? How can we allocate the different resources that we have in the communities, and maybe even provide funding for folks?
It's interesting that you mentioned that it's kind of focused. It's Park Cities, North Dallas focused. That's an interesting community that I think a lot of people will think, what do those people have to worry about, right? I mean, I can tell you, being a member of one of those communities, that addiction does not discriminate. It doesn't matter where you live or how much money you have or what you drive. Do you find that sometimes people in those communities in particular actually have an added barrier to seek help because maybe there is this expectation of, I've got most of the rest of my life figured out. I should have this part figured out too.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, addiction cuts across all demographics, all boundaries, all economic strata. It does not stop at any particular type of individual. And so people in North Dallas and Park Cities have just as much problem with substance use as any other part of Dallas, any other part of Texas or the United States. So I think we have a particular interest in our serving our community first because we need that sort of granular level to help folks that are in our local area, and we have a responsibility to provide that. But just because people have resources or have education doesn't mean that they necessarily know where to turn when substance use strikes, right, or they need help. So we want to make that a thrust of our purpose to bring that to them in our community.
Oh gosh, I can really see the need, because it's like, even for a doctor, a pediatrician, or a dentist, people don't know where to go. And then they send their group chat like, hey, where should I go for this? People aren't going to do that for, my gosh, my, loved ones having a relapse. Where do I go? So I can see where those referral services would be absolutely critical. What are you seeing as the biggest issue right now? Is there a certain substance, a certain component of addiction that's really prevalent?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. It's hard to tell. Alcohol is usually still number one, but dealing with a lot of college-age kids, teenagers, early 20s, 30s, I'm seeing all sorts of substances. My job is almost to try to keep up with what's going on in the street, and that's a lot of times where Fritz helps me out, figure out, he's the boots on the ground, knowing exactly what's happening on the granular level. And for me, I see patients in my office, and they come to me with all sorts of problems. I mean, alcohol is probably the most prevalent right now, but marijuana is a huge problem in our community because it's become so destigmatized. But people can get addicted to marijuana like they can get addicted to any substance.
Can you delve deeper into that? I think that is such a point that has not been talked about lately, because everybody's like, well, it's legal here and there, and my grandma takes it, and so there could be a problem that sort of goes unaddressed for so long because everyone around them is thinking, oh well, I guess it's fine. Right. So can you speak to that?
And probably for 80 to 90% of the population, it's okay, sure, or they know how to handle it or can use it judiciously or appropriately. But the ones that I see are the ones that have really developed a proper addiction to THC.
And how would you know?
Because it's causing problems in their functionality. Like they're not, it definitely decreases motivation. It enhances depression. It contributes to anxiety. So I see a lot of folks that have lost a lot of functionality and a lot of the zest for life because, they're basically smoking marijuana all day long. And nowadays, the cannabis is so much more potent than it was when we were growing up, that it's a different animal, right? Fritz, I mean, it's something that nowadays, and you go to a vape shop and you buy, Delta 8 or Delta 10, or, probably some offshoot of THC, which is the active component. It behaves the same way, and it's 90, 95% THC content, right? So I'm seeing people that are actually getting psychotic disorders from THC that we never used to see in the past. So
Fritz, I want to move over to you. So first up, for folks who are listening and saying, okay, well, what the heck is a sober coach? Kind of give us your 15-second elevator pitch here on what it is you do.
Yeah, okay. So a sober coach helps people a lot of times when they get out of treatment for aftercare. Maybe a lot of times I'm the last stop on the train. They've done IOPs, they've done intensive outpatients, or they've done sober living. They've had a treatment team around them. So I'm more hands-on. I talk to them daily, text, calls. I talk to their family members, whether it's mom and dad, brother, sister, husband, wife. And I help kind of set up a team like a Dr. Spencer with a therapist, if they need somebody for nutrition or something to help them get back in school, and make sure the team runs all with the same task. And then I help, show them how to have fun in recovery, or show them how to fill their time, or where to look for a job, or where to, this is how you get on a schedule to clean your house and do your laundry. Basic skills that you probably take for granted that you just know how to do. But when someone comes out of a long run or active addiction, it takes a while to kind of get back into place.
So this is way more than a sponsor.
Oh yeah, I don't do any kind of sponsor work. It's my job. So a lot of times I'll work with guys, 16 to 30, and whether it's failure to launch or they, graduated college and everything imploded, mostly mom, sometimes dad, but mostly mom wants to call and check in with them all the time. And so in early recovery, they could say they had a bad day and mom sounds the fire alarm and freaks out, when in reality, they just had a bad day like you and I have a bad day. So
no, I will continually sound the alarm.
Right. You're talking to smother mother over here.
Well, so I encourage the helicopter mom or smother mother to call me and say, hey, John had a bad day today, called me. Is there any cause for alarm? And it's like, no, I've talked to him. I know what my guys have done all day via just text. It's not just about recovery. I know how was work, who is annoying them, if they're going to watch Thursday night football. And so I'll tell mom, call me, and I'll calm mom down. And then I help mom learn how to set boundaries, and maybe she needs to get into a psychiatrist or a therapist. And I help encourage that. So yeah, sponsor, I help my guys find the right sponsors, but mine is more My work's more based on day-to-day functions in life with the help of professionals like Lee or a therapist or whatever else they're doing.
It's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting concept. I would imagine that you probably get feedback sometimes from folks that are like, listen, like, what the hell is this? Like, I mean, AA is a church basement and some bad coffee and you figure it out. I mean, there's not somebody who's going to tell you how to make your bed and brush your teeth every morning. Do you get feedback like that from people?
Yeah, I get, when I first started, I took anybody. So a lot of guys would hurl, you're my babysitter or you're just here to hold my hand. And in some cases I am. And in some cases people need it. Lately, I don't take those clients. It's more people that really want someone to help be their sounding board and help them find these resources that they need. And, it kind of goes back to what you said about treatment. You're not going to send the group text, so you get online. Well, you're going to get bombarded with 1,000 places that none of them are worth anything. They just want your money. They say they do equine therapy and all these random things, and really they look at a horse and that's all they get. And so when you get in recovery, what AA meeting do you go to? What doctor do you see? Mm-hmm. Should I go to this gym? How do I go out with my friends if I'm 25 and everyone wants to go out? And so I help them prepare for that. Sometimes I get negative feedback. Sure. A lot of times it's, my guys trust me, so maybe mom and dad can't call them out on their BS, but I can. Mm-hmm. And I just can say, this is what I'm here for. This is what, I'm going to call you out. But I've also been through it. So I don't take I'm not a level ahead of them or above them. I'm just their peer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's particularly helpful for somebody like me, more of a professional standpoint, because, addiction is something that plays itself out over everyday course, right? And the old historic model of sending someone to rehab every time they relapse or have an issue, right? It doesn't really work because they end up coming back to their environment that they were in when they were using. So I was having somebody like Fritz that, I can maybe see the person in my office once a week or once a month or whatever it is, but having like Fritz be able to meet them where they are every day or a few times a week, and they can get into a good rhythm. And I know that they're getting in a good routine, and maybe they're going to meetings, and maybe, they're meeting with a sponsor. Like, it's a huge resource to be able to have.
And what a bridge. Yeah, because it's just like the cycle. That's the hard part. Once you're out of rehab, once you're figuring out life, once you've got like that idle time.
That's right.
Right. So with this coaching scenario, you were explaining to us how often you're in touch with somebody, which is quite remarkable. It's like more touch points than probably any of us have with anybody with any kind of accountability.
Well, and you look at it, it's so normalized in other scenarios, right? Like somebody comes out of
like a personal trainer.
Well, or I was thinking more of like somebody comes out of prison and there's a parole officer that reintroduces you and says, hey, this is how you live life, not living in your old life. When you leave rehab, there's no one there to say, okay, you can't just go back and do all the same things sober now. I mean, it's everything has to change. I do want to touch, though, real quick on, particularly for our audience, what I'm hearing from both of you is that you deal with a lot of young people here. So for our audience that has maybe teenage children or, children that are having difficulty with addiction, are you seeing a jump in the number of people that you serve that are younger?
Oh, yeah. It's insane.
Absolutely.
So I graduated from Highland Park in 2009. And I do a lot of work with them. And I was one of the only kids freshman year that had ever really tried anything outside of alcohol. And I remember kind of being this black sheep. And now I meet kids in 7th and 8th grade that have been to rehab, been to wilderness, done any drug you can think of. They know what fentanyl is. And it kind of blows my mind. It more blew my mind about 18 months ago. Now it's pretty much the norm. And a lot of times the parents don't know what to do. And sometimes the school doesn't know what to do. And so then that's when they get on the internet and start researching. And so that's been a big thing I've tried to help with more than doing client work or signing these kids up, is helping parents figure out where to go, which is how I got involved with CARE. Mm-hmm. Because they do classes on Wednesdays for people that have been in trouble and they help educate. I've gone into families have hosted breakfasts or dinners that I'll go on the weekdays and speak to them. And because that's the thing, when you have a 14-year-old son, and when you were 14, you can think about all I did was play sports and go to school, and your 14-year-old son smokes weed every day and drinks alcohol and has done hard drugs. What do you do?
Well, and what do you do? Because I think a lot of the parents are going to want to know, okay, so what can I do to prevent that? Is that the model these days? Or is it like, you know what, you actually can't prevent it, but what you can do is support or navigate or fix on the back end?
Prevent's a hard word. a while ago, Lee talked about what him and his wife do with their girls, which, it's what you call it, the drip model.
Drip
Okay, tell us.
Yeah.
That's my wife.
A little bit of weed every day.
Mary Cheney, she crushes it. It's a great, I like it. I've used it. I say it to my guys' parents all the time.
Yeah, and our basic philosophy is like, talk about it early, right? Talk about substances, talk about the elephant in the room that we are all scared to talk about, right? Because we don't want to introduce the topic, and we know our kids are awkward about it, et cetera. So what we try to do is just introduce little nuggets to them from time to time. We talk about it. We ask them about how their day was. If anybody's, using any substances, what have they kind of experiences have they had? And we just kind of do it, incorporate it into regular conversation from time to time. We try not to make it awkward because it can definitely be awkward.
Starting at what age?
I have girls that are 8 and 12. So, my 8-year-old probably... Yeah, she probably hears stuff she doesn't need. I mean, we're not talking too much.
But the older sibling, the younger one is always the age of the older one.
I mean, they're
right?
like at 8,
in terms of
at 10, 11, 12, they're starting to vape in the bathrooms at school. It's becoming part of what they talk about or what they see as cool. What their peers are doing.
Yeah.
So, we're not trying to we're trying to stigmatize it, but we're not trying to make a huge deal out of it. I'm just trying to incorporate it into normal conversation, and most importantly, I want them to know that we're here for them,
and we can
we'll support them, and we can talk about it.
I would imagine that most parents are probably afraid to have the conversation because they don't want to introduce the information. But if I'm hearing you correctly, it's like your kids already have the information.
They're getting it.
They have it, and they're going to get it from somebody else. So you can either get it from you and have a little bit of control and conversation to know, or they can get it from somebody else, and then you're kind of really screwed.
That's right, because the number one source of where people start their drug use, whether it's pills or whether it's marijuana or whether it's nicotine or whatever it is, it starts with peers.
So specifically for Care Dallas, so if I'm a parent that's in that kind of situation, so first of all, I mean, are there resources for me to find out, okay, how do I even have those conversations, or is the audience you serve more so people who are already dealing with a child who may have an addiction issue?
We do both. We focus both. I mean, I would call that kind of primary prevention when it's an audience that has not yet had a problem with substance use, and we're trying to do general education.
Right.
So we focus on that.
So there are programs like that through Care Dallas?
There are, absolutely.
Okay.
For instance, Fritz and I are going to talk to SMU on Monday. We're going to talk about Narcan, which is a medication that helps with the reversal of if someone's had a fentanyl overdose.
Right.
So a lot of those kids have not used fentanyl before, and they have probably never been exposed to it, don't know anything about it. Some of them may have, unfortunately, right? But it's a sort of a general primary prevention purpose of, hey, here's a device that you should have around you in your dorms, in your fraternity houses.
Do they have it?
So that's the recommendation now, is to have it on hand always for all students of that age.
Like as if you, like, it's funny, we have defibrillators at our place of work, and we were talking with people, and the woman that was there to do the CPR training, she said, the big thing that we're doing now is installing like Narcan cabinets in fraternity houses and sorority houses.
It's already saved at least 5 lives this year at SMU alone.
That's insane.
Wow. That is strong. I'm curious to hear, Fritz, what you mentioned your own sort of struggle. What ended up working for you?
Yeah. So I don't know if anything worked. I'd been I'm actually an alumni of the CARE program that they host on Wednesday nights from when I was in high school. And I've been in and out of treatment, IOPs, therapy, psychiatry, AA meetings, you name it, I've done it. And when I was 23 one day, I just woke up and I said, it's time, I got to go get some help. And I think the big part was I had been in and out of all these places that by then I knew what I had to do. It just came down to executing what I knew I had to do. And so there's people ask me all the time, what happened? How can we replicate that? I don't know if we can.
Okay, that's honest.
But I do like the talking about it and having people exposed to it so that they know what to do when problems arise with their loved ones, right? Again, it comes down to the Googling and call care. What do you do? And I think the more, I knew very early on that I was an addict alcoholic. I mean, I'm talking 15. I was at an AA meeting that some people encouraged me to go to, and I heard people talk, and I thought, oh my God, this is me. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think if I had had all the education, whether it was because I had been in trouble or just because my parents were throwing me in these places, I think that's what kind of hit me finally was, okay, I see what I need to do.
Is there anything you think your parents should have done differently?
No. They did all they could. My parents were awesome. I don't think I'd change where I ended up. I had a real bad 11-year run with drugs and alcohol starting very young. And then I've had a great 10 years in sobriety, and I'm close to both my parents. And people ask me that all the time. I'm cool with where my life is. So if we change something back then, my dad did hide some of his problems he had in college. When I got arrested when I was 14 for the first time, possession of marijuana, and my dad told me he'd smoked weed one time and it made him anxious and he hated it. Well, I just thought he was a loser. I was like, okay, well then you have no idea what we're talking about here. And then found out that he had his own deal, and when he was in college and a little bit out, and he, not addiction or anything, but he partied too hard and he had smoked weed more than one time, and sorry to blow you up. And, I think if he had maybe told me, I might've been a little more comfortable telling him my struggles. My mom was always open with me. She's actually in recovery as well. And, I never had a problem, it was always when it got bad, but I always knew I could tell my mom, hey, this happened, or this is causing me this. And I probably told her 75% of the truth, but I felt comfortable enough with her to let her know what was going on. So other than that, my dad not telling me that weird lie. And I get it too, though, right? It's kind of like what you said. Where's the line of what you tell him? If he had been like, yeah, I partied all through college and after, I'd be like, well, you're doing great. Right. So what are we talking about?
Yeah.
But I do think in today's world, you do have to talk about it more with your kids, even if they're not struggling. Because if your kids have a cell phone with social media, whether they're 8 or 18, they're going to see people vaping, talking about smoking weed, drinking the hard seltzers. It's just kind of cool now. It's like what they do.
Well, and the thing that petrifies me the most, we both have young kids. My boys are 5 and 7. And what scares me the most, when I was a kid, I grew up in the 80s, and there were this is drugs, this is your brain on drugs, and just say no. And, you live in this.
They acted like people were going to hold you up against a wall and force you to do drugs.
And that if you did it once, you'd die.
Right.
The reality today is, you do it once and you could die because of fentanyl. Absolutely. I mean, there is, I remember I was mentioning earlier, I do a lot of work with Grant Halliburton Foundation, and I think it was our honorary chairs last year. Their son, who had a prescription for Xanax or something, had run out, and a friend said, oh, I have some. Well, it turned out the friend didn't get it where he was supposed to get it, and the kid took one. It had fentanyl, and now he's dead. So it's so scary to me as a parent. And what I find is that I am very kind of Nancy Reagan about it, right? Where I'm like, absolutely not. You will never, and I think we get so scared sometimes about talking to kids about things because we don't want to, introduce it to them. But what I want to ask you is this. So Care Dallas obviously has a suite of services that are available to anybody who contacts them. What do you think the bar to entry is for people? Why don't you think, what is the thing that you think stops people from reaching out, and how can we help them over that hurdle?
Yeah, I think it's just a problem of outreach. I don't know if people know enough about care. They don't, I think they just start Googling. Right. You start Googling, and the first thing that's going to pop up, the first 10 hits are going to be treatment centers that are advertising for their treatment programs. Right.
That are paying to be at the top of
paying to be there.
Sure.
Right. Not everybody can go to Passages in Malibu.
That's right. And so people don't know where to turn. I think we have to do a better job of making ourselves more front and center for people to know that we're out there and offering resources. And I think it's just overwhelming for people, and it's a time where they really need sometimes they just need to talk it through with somebody, and I think we can provide that kind of service for people, just to sort of get the information out there and say, okay, what are my options? What in the world can I do? That's
a good point. So I think a lot of times parents will start Googling and they'll see these treatment centers and they may pull the trigger too fast. But if they could call Care and talk it, well, we don't need long-term treatment or anything. Let's throw them into a therapist and see what's going on for the first 2 months. And if it progresses, and I think that's a big part of care, is helping people who, as a mom or dad, you find something and the alarms go off, right? And you start going helicopter mom, and you're probably too close to it for someone at Care to tell you, hey, wait, this is pretty normal for it. It's startling, but let's start with maybe go talk to Lee Spencer, or go meet with somebody, or you and your husband or wife go and talk to someone about how to handle this. We don't need to Google treatment centers and ship the kid off to Florida and he's gone for 90 days and we don't really know what I see that a lot as kids come back out of treatment, and I meet them and I look at their parents and say, you sent
them to treatment?
We didn't need this. Right? The resources you just used could have been avoided. And that's where, if they had just known where Care was to help give them an idea, they'd be in a different spot.
Is there a peer-to-peer component there for parents, like connecting family? Because I think that's honestly one of the difficult things sometimes, is that when you're in a situation like that and you have a child who maybe has an issue with addiction, and you feel like, well, clearly we're the only family on the street that's having this problem. We're the only family in the neighborhood. We're the only family in the Park Cities. Is there that opportunity to connect families who, much like in AA, can sit down and say, I know where you are. Let me tell you what happened to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a a long list of people that have used the care resources, and we can connect them with people that can just kind of be there to support them or offer them experience, strength, and hope, or guidance, or whatever they can offer. And I mean, we'll do whatever it takes, basically, to help someone.
People on our board. I mean, it's crazy how many people you meet through care that it's kind of like you said, you'd have no idea, and then they start sharing their story because they've had to do with care because they've been affected by it. And you say, oh, wait, you work at CBRE and you're doing this, or you've been there. Or last year at the care breakfast, our speaker, you would have never thought, if you had known what was going on with him, and he was so honest about everything that he had struggled with. It's funny you say about don't think people are going through it in the Park Cities or wherever, and I get that a lot where, we can't let anybody know that John's struggling with this. He's a senior at Highland Park. He plays football. I could drive down to every street in Highland Park and name a house I've been inside that I've talked to the family about drugs or addiction, and it is sad, but going back to your point, if you called and reached out to care, we would have many people that have struggled with it or haven't struggled with it, but dealt with family members that would be more than happy to reach out.
How can the community support you? How can they help? Fundraisers, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we have a breakfast coming up in October 21st. Yeah, at 9 o'clock.
Chris Herron
at the Dallas Country Club.
Former NBA 33rd pick in the draft. He has an awesome story. Got drafted by the Nuggets, played for the Celtics. Blew up his whole career for drugs and got really dark, and now he goes around and bears it all out there. I mean, I've heard him speak. He's phenomenal. Kind of the audience that we deal with, right? He was one of the, 33rd pick in the NBA draft, and he blew it all up to go get high. I mean, essentially is what he did. And then he struggled real hard outside of that. Now he goes around and speaks, and his story's awesome. And the care breakfast is a great.
And that's what people really connect with, people's stories. So the breakfast is an opportunity to hear more about care, get involved if you want to get involved, contribute if you want to contribute, and hear an awesome story and meet some good people.
What's the website, Instagram? How do people find you online?
caredallas.org.
Yes, the ladies in the room are shaking their heads. Yes, that's
Don't ask me on Instagram because I'm not allowed to have one.
And we can link it on on our
in our show comments as well. We appreciate you both being here, and thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thanks for having us.
It's funny, you were asking during the segment, how do parents know that their kid has a problem? I could tell you this from experience. If you're talking to your kid about why did you do it? Why again? Because of course they'll swear it over, and they say, I don't know. Believe your kid, because if they are truly addicted to something, they actually don't know. They have that the powerlessness is so incredible in addiction that despite your better judgment, despite being the 33rd drafted pick in the NBA, and having this big, beautiful life, you are powerless over the decision of whether or not you get high that day.
That's really critical advice.
It's insane. And I do want to say, Dallas has such a robust recovery community. I have a lot of friends who will move away from Dallas. LA is actually a really great recovery community as well, but they'll move away and then they'll come back and they'll say there's just nothing like recovery in Dallas. You will amaze you how big the community is and how welcoming the people are, and just the quality and depth of sobriety that people have. So it's nice to see organizations like this that are making sure that people have access.
Well, and it's good for families to hear who are potentially listening to this at their low point and thinking there's no future and no hope for my child, or just thinking, gosh, this is just so bad right now. I can't imagine a bright light at the end of this. So I love to hear that.
And I think that also it's like, okay, well, what did I do wrong as a parent to cause this? You know what?
Yeah, that's why I asked that. He said nothing. Yeah, he said nothing. I feel like I've asked that question 100,000 times on interviews like this, and it's just sometimes there's something super specific, and I think we can all learn from that, and it's hard to admit that, but more often than not, it's like this was just the path that it was going to be.
It is what it is. All right, hey, we appreciate you. We want to remind you a new podcast every Tuesday morning on your favorite podcast platform. Go ahead and click like and subscribe, because we would love to make sure that you know every time we are on the air. And if you do nothing else today, go find yourself a friend you don't need to clean the house for. We appreciate you.